Hello and welcome to another video here at Frontline Model Hobbies and part 8. Yes, we're nearly at the end of the building phase. So Bombay, as you can see, this is where we're going to kind of end up. Well, this is where we are going to end up. And as you believe it or not, I tried to do this in 5 days back in November. So let's see if I can remember. So the first thing to do is to put the ammo boxes together, which you believe it or not are made of wood. Very much like the rest of the airframe. But anyway, gloss over that. So, putting the next one together, yeah, to be fair, there is a lot of trimming involved. Early Airfix, I know. So, yeah. Blade out, as you can see, and I am actually going to be doing a lot of trimming and test fitting to get these together. So, early on in the video, I'm just going to leave you with me, just fanning about trying to get this to fit. So, see you in a bit. Cheerio. Crikey, I must admit that was quite a faff to get them to fit, but anyway, we're there now. So next thing to do is to put the top piece on, and it's very much the same. Anyway, cheerio, see you in a bit. Well, hey, at least the gaps are, well, minimal anyway. But they're done now. Took me a lot longer than I thought, but yeah, done. So moving on is to the fuel tank. Already put them together and primed them, and then I decided to modify them. So I'm using the landing gear photo etch set, and you'll see why in a minute, but there's some round circles, and I can use that as a bit like a filler port for one of the fuel tanks. So I'm using 4mm plastic tube, as you can see there, and then what I've got to do is drill a pilot hole. Now I need to make this tube recessed, so you'll see why I need to drill some holes, as you can see. So I've done a pilot hole, and then I think this is like 3mm, so I'm working in a mil graduation all the way up, and then I've oversized the hole bigger than the 4mm plastic tube, as you can see, so that there's a gap around it. You'll see why in a minute. So next up, I need to measure the depth, so I'm using the vernier calipers, and I'm just pushing down, as you can see, and then I'm just using the end as like a depth gauge. So that form of depth gauge gives me the length of my pipe. Oh god, I'm at it again. But there's one problem. That gives me the depth of the actual pipe to the surface of the fuel tank, and I don't want that. So as you can see, what I've done is test fitted and sanded and this, that and the other, so that I get the right depth, and I've glued it in. And the gap around the edge is just there so that I can actually glue the bloody thing in. So moving on is to actually put the photo etched in there. And like I said, this is from the landing gear set. This is just generic parts that I thought was about right. And I've put it in there and just glued it in. And then the next thing to do is to glue the top part in there. So it's a bit of kind of the same of what I've seen in pictures. So it's not perfect, but it'll do. And what I've also done is I've stamped some round plastic card using punch and die set like so. So next up is to paint the ammo boxes, and that I'm using Guns H47 red brown and Tamiya's XF64, and I've also glued in some cocktail sticks in there just with some super glue. As you can see, I've not actually primed this because I don't really see any need to be honest with you, but what I've thinned it with is some leveling thinner, I believe. So yeah, I must admit, like I said, it was a long time ago since I did this for doing my voiceover. So yeah, that's what I think what I've done anyway. So this is just a base coat. This is just to give me a judge of what colour I need to go and how I think it's going to look. So while the ammo boxes are drying, I thought I'd paint the fuel tank. So again, using Guns H47 red brown, but this time I'm using Attacker's Traffic red. And as you can see, I've painted them darker to start off with, as you're going to see here. I've not primed this one for some reason, I don't know why, but either way. This stuff that was on the fuel tanks is like a doped substance or whatever that reacts with the fuel and plugs the gap, which is quite ingenious. So what I've noticed is that quite a lot, if not all, of the RAF and Royal Navy were painted red. Now, going back to the ammo boxes, what I have done is I've painted a lighter shade of the brown using a grey, I believe. So just bear with me 2 secs and I'll see you in a bit. Now going a bit further, as you can see on the one on the left, I've shaded a lot more with the grey. So I've put a lot more grey in there, and I've used XF19 just to take the edge off it. I didn't want to use white, as you can see in the pot there, it's just a lot lighter. So again, bear with me 2 minutes and I will see you in a bit. So leaving all that to dry, it means now we can move neatly on to doing the engine cradle and all the frame for the Bombay. Ooh. Now, like really good Blue Peter fashion, as you can see, I've already glued one together. So I'm just going to show you how I put all this together. So, like Airfix of old, they leave you some nice flashy areas to deal with. Now, as you can see, I'm just taking a knife blade to this area and just getting rid of flash, basically. And also I'm squaring it off for the next part, which is, yeah, quite important. So I'm putting these, what I'm going to call bendy bars in. I'm guessing they're like sway bars or stuff to stop the actual, or the frame, or keeping the frame together, or wherever you, either way. Somebody's going to mention in the comments going, I think you'll find. But either way, now don't do what I do here. Now you can easily muck this up and get it all the way the wrong way around, because you can, as you can see, I'm just figuring out which way it needs to go, but I've actually put the actual frame, the cradle, on the wrong way to the frame. As you can see, I'm going to swap it round. But when I swap it round, which is great, brilliant, yeah, well done, yeah, keep going, I put the middle bar in wrong. As you can see there, oh no. And I actually glue it in wrong, so I have to sort of cut the both ends off. But either way, I'm not showing that, but I have to do that. Next thing you need to do is put these bits in here, and they just fit into these like sway bars. So anyway, bear with me 2 minutes and I'll see you in a bit. See, told you, when I put this in, it's the wrong way round, that middle bar, and I don't even pick it up even when I'm watching it on the video. What a knob.
Oh, bugger.
Yeah, I deserved it, I know. Anyway, moving on to the fuel tanks, and as you can see, I'm using traffic red and red primer mixed together, and the left one, as you can see, I've lightened quite a bit, leaving some shadow areas where the straps are. So like normal, I'm going to leave you with me just doing some lightening. Anyway, cheerio, see you in a bit. Oh yeah, and I've lightened it even more with the traffic red, as you can see there. So again, see you in a bit. Alrighty then, with all those little bits and bobs done and out of the way, now it's time to actually get on with the Bombay itself. Now, I am going to explain what I've done with those little bits there. I'll come back to that in a minute. And I've also painted the, what I'm going to call the bathtub, where the fuel tanks are going to go in there, white. And I've also painted the side wall, the green, thinking that it's actually going to fit in there really well. More about that in a bit. And also what I found was this massive gaping massive hole, which I'm going to fill with some plastic card over the top like so. Just a strip that I cut out from 0.13mm plastic card like I did with the wings. Nothing too elaborate there. Now, one thing people keep mentioning is where you're getting your reference material from. Well, I'm using this Sam Publications book here. As you can see, it's a bit torn. But if you don't get this far into my videos and you don't actually look and see what books I'm using, well, that's really your own fault. But anyway, so page 53, as you can see there, and this is virtually a one-to-one of all the wires, cables, and it's just all the plumbing for the pneumatic systems, I'm guessing, and everything else, literally in there, as you can see. And it shows you every single wire, all the tie downs, where everything is. I mean, you can't go wrong with this book for the Bombay, to be honest with you. But this is the best part that you're going to get. The sidewalls, no chance. And there are reasons why I have not included or actually videoed me doing the wiring for the Bombay. Now, the first one off the top of my head is that, trying to hold a 1/24th Mosquito while doing some wiring, while getting two meat hooks of a couple of hands in there and video at the same time, well, you're going to see naff all. Second thing is, well, there's a shit ton of wiring in there, and when you've seen one, you've seen, well, all of them, to be honest with you. And not only that, it would take me about 3 weeks to video it, and it would take 3 weeks for you to watch it. And as you can see, I'm going to do a quick demonstration of me putting the kit down of the way I had it, and then trying to get all the wiring done. And yeah, even I was struggling to see what I was doing. And the final thing is, well, if you want to see some wiring, you can go to part 5 of the engine build and see some bending of wire. So, in a minute, what I'll do is I'll take you around the Bombay and I'll show you what I've done. But the white bathtub, as I'm going to call it, where the fuel tanks are sat, they're painted white, I think, for the crews, just to make sure there's no fuel staining, leaks or anything like that, so they can see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off that edge, put the fuel tanks in there so that I can put that cable in there. I've put this strip in, which I mentioned earlier, finally glued it in. Put the masking tape either side, as you can see, because that's going to cover some gaps where some parts. Put some more plastic card on there, and then there's some parts here that I'm going to mention in a bit. But again, they're made out of plastic card. These bits here, the greyer parts, they're from the Focke-Wulf FW190 30-second Edard set that I did in part 5 of the engine build, again there. And that is a scratch build part, again with the front parts of the Bombay that I did out of plastic card. These end fittings are from the Hero Boy set, again from part 5 of the engine build. And again, I've fitted some Focke-Wulf parts here and there, as you can see, all the way down. It's not going to be exactly the same for the real aircraft, but I don't care. So for the wiring, I actually used fuse wire. Now, somebody might say, oh my God, what have you done? Why have you bought all those packs? You can get it on a reel. Well, to be fair, I didn't know what size I wanted, so I went to a shop and just bought the whole rack. It only cost me 12 quid. So yeah, I can't really grumble for the price of the kit. I can't really argue. So anyway, yeah, that's what I did. So first thing I need to do is to actually paint the Bombay. I'm going to paint it green, and this is, I believe, Tamiya XF71. So anyway, cheerio, see you in a bit. And with it painted, the details actually do start to pop, as you can see, so I can't really wait to get some paint on there. And as you can see, I've already done that. Now, again, I've not videoed this because all I had to do was just paint silver. And I used Vallejo's Model Air Silver, just a silver, and painted all the wires and cables. And it took me forever because there was a lot of them. And yeah. But anyway, next up is to put some shadow brown on there as a wash. So again, cheerio, see you in a bit. And it's the usual case, isn't it, when you've actually finished something and you've done the weathering and you think, you know what, that doesn't really sit quite well. It doesn't look bad, don't get me wrong, the brown, but in this area around here, I might make it a bit darker, maybe put some really thin black in there just to give it a bit more contrast. So moving on to actually put in the ammo feed and the ammo boxes in there. Must admit, you have got to put this in. So it's got to be painted. So I'm doing the normal way of doing modelling. Yeah. Now, next thing to do is to actually glue it in. And the reason why you've got to glue this in now is because it doesn't fit when this piece goes in. Yeah. Now, I'll put some tape on there, as you can see. Now, the reason being is that hole goes straight into the cockpit, so I didn't want any shit or crap going into the inside of the canopy since I've glued that in. Now, the actual wall itself, when you put it in, it looks alright. It looks fine, but when you rotate the airframe around, it doesn't fit very well, doesn't sit down. It's just not a nice fit. I noticed that on the other side, so I had to do some trimming and scraping and this, that and the other just to make it go in there very, very nice. So I'm going to do that now and I'll show you what I did. So the first thing to do is to scrape this area down, and I'm using a trumpeter scraper just to get the bulk of it down. And I'm not going to show you everything, but that's how thin I needed to get it down to. And you need to trim both ends, so the top and the top and the side, so that you can get it to fit. Also, what I did was I just sanded slightly the bottom of it where it actually meets the wing, so that it sits a bit further down, and now it sits flush. As you can see, it's not a major issue, which I'm quite pleased with. Alrighty then, moving on to my next biggest bugbear with this kit, and that's these bombs here. 3 parts, really Airfix for a 1/24th kit, but anyway. So as you can see, the fins are oversized and that round ring at the back is oversized, and the actual fuse itself and everything is just, I mean, the fuse, it doesn't look too bad in retrospect, but the rest of it, and I mean, it's only the front part that's alright, so I decided to, I went there, and I went there again, and I did it again. Now, the reason why I've left one is because you've always got something to reference back to, and that's always a good rule of thumb. So, for starters, what you want to do is to take some measurements of the rear fins. And as you can see here, I need the angle of the dangle, so to speak, of this rear fin where it meets the bomb itself. And in a minute, I'm going to be a bit of a knob. Hey, knocked it off. Yeah, so what I'm using is a ruler, and I'm just getting a gist of the angle, so to speak, from the bottom fin as a datum for a straight line. And I'm just going to sort of, it's around about 14 degrees, in retrospect, about 14 and a half. And then what also I'm going to do is take some other measurements using the vernier calipers. So I'm taking the length there and taking a note of it, and then taking a width when this rear ring is on there, and I'm just taking a width of the actual bomb itself, and then I'm taking the inner diameters and this, that and the other, and I'm just taking a measurement from everywhere so that I've got an idea in my head, and then I can do this and I can draw up a plan, which then gives me the ability to have the confidence to make a new fin. And like I said previously, that 15 degrees, I reckon about 14 and a half. So first thing I want to do is start cutting the fins off, and I'm just using brute force and ignorance here just to cut each one off like so, and I have videoed each one. And then you can take a scalpel blade and take it back off. And for the fins themselves, I'm going to be using 0.75mm plastic card, as you can see there. And the actual round ring itself at the back, I'm going to be using this alley sheet. I can't remember the thickness, it is quite thin. And to mark out some areas, I'm going to use a Sharpie as well. Now, once you've cut the fins off, what you'll find is that there'll be areas where you'll see where the fins were, or the previous fins, that is. Now, you want to leave a mark just at the front and at the back, and yeah, it's self-explanatory, but you don't want to put the marks where your new fins are going to go. because there won't be a straight edge to follow. Next thing to do is to use an engineer square and square up an edge of the plastic card, that 0.7mm stuff that you're going to use, and then use your protractor just to form that diagonal line to 15 degrees. Then use a ruler from that corner of the plastic card to where you've done that line, or where you've marked that line. And I just did it with a scalpel blade, and then there you go. Leave yourself enough area, enough plastic card, so you can form 4 if not more, just in case you mess up. So like you can see there. And then final thing is just to trim it out and cut it out. And like I said, I've left myself enough. So once the bottom half is taken off and I've left with the plastic card that I'm going to use, and now I can test fit. And yeah, in retrospect, like I said, I should have done it about 14 degrees, but yeah, I mess up, so you don't have to. But the next thing to do is actually use your vernier calipers and get the right measurement that you got previously to measure the actual length of each of the fins, like I've done there. The last one on the far left is just the excess, so I'm just going to cut that to the right length, and I've done with it. And you can measure it with a ruler if needs be. Yeah, I thought I'd leave this bit in because I thought it was quite fun at the time back in November, but in retrospect obviously we didn't know, and I thought I'd show her on camera as well, and she weren't on any of it. But a few days ago, and she was just over 8 months old, that she sadly passed away. Her name was Raven, and we're going to miss her. I must admit, it's very difficult for me to move on from here, especially when I saw that on my video, but I must. So the next thing to do is to line up a engineer square, and then I'm just literally marking out using a scalpel blade like so. And then the end, I just thought it would just be easier to get an old fin that you've cut off and just line it up best as, and then just mark it out with a Sharpie. And one thing I thought was that it would be easy, instead of following the same steps previously to form out each fin, you can just super glue it onto the plastic card like so. As you can see there, just super glue it on and then cut round it, simple as. And as you can see that I've put the 2 marks on there, what I previously said with the Sharpie, and you can see it's quite self-explanatory now, that if you put the marks where the fins go, then you're not going to know, and being able to line it up and get it nice and square, which I'm going to do there. So just bear with me 2 ticks, and I'm just going to put all these on. So cheerio, see you in a bit. Right, now it's time for the round circle bit, now that the fins are done. Now, as you can see, I've marked out an area that needs to be taken off, and I'm using some photo etch bending pliers, the Tamiya ones, just to wiggle it out. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. There you go. Now, I've got a profile here, which is the Sharpie pen itself, and I want something undersized. Now, the reason why I want it undersized is that when I profile this circle around this pen, like you can see there, when I actually put it onto the fins, then it's actually going to be undersized, and then when it expands onto the fins, it's not going to leave any distortion. That's what I've got in my head. Anyway, bear with me 2 ticks, and I'll see you in a bit. And as you can see, when I actually put the round circle bit onto the fins, it's well undersized, quite a lot. And there's a lot of material still left to be cut and trimmed later on, which I'm going to do in a bit. Now, the first important thing is to have some grooves, which I'm going to be doing here, for that round circle bit to be put on. Now, I'm using some tape because obviously I took a measurement of these cutouts off the real bit, and I cut some tape to that right size so that I've got a datum of where to go to, and then I'm going to trim to around about there. So I just need to cut in a notch just to the depth of what I think is the right depth for the aluminium to go on there, and then I can trim it off. So again, leave it with me and I'll see you in a tad. Cheerio. So now everything's all in place. The fins are all glued in, and I must admit I've left them to dry for a bit. The actual round circle bit needs to be trimmed down, and as you can see here, I'm using some Tamiya photo etch scissors and some pliers as well, just to make sure it's nice and square and profiled and this, that and the other. Now the round circle bit needs to sit on one of the fins, so I'm just putting it on one of the fins like you can see there, just making sure it's all square. And then the other excess material, again, I'm just going to draw a line where that fin is going to sit, and then I've already cut it off. The final bit is just to glue everything together with some of really thin super glue, and there we have it. So I've got 1, 2, 3 and 4 all done, looking kind of the same, so I'm happy with that. Let's face it, these bombs have gone on well long enough, so I'm using Mr. Surfacer 1000 to do some bomb texture, some stippling. Ooh. Now I'm going to draw a line on here, and anything to the left of that line, around about there, don't stipple. To the right, obviously, that's where the bomb is and where the texture needs to be. Now I'm applying this very thin, and I only do that much, and then I start stippling because it dries very, very, very quickly, as you can see there, and it's nearing off dry in a few minutes, and then I can do the next stage. If you get too much like you see there, just take some excess off of the side and then just keep on going, and then just stipple again. So don't work in too bigger areas, and just keep it very nice and neat as you go along. Also, one thing to note is you do get a bit of a dry tip, and none of us like that, do we, fellas? So anyway, if you do, bit of a kitchen towel, wipe the excess off the brush, and then clean up with some leveling thinner. Anyway, leave me with this fannying about, and yeah, Cheerio. See you in a bit. And there we have it. That's the bombs. That's the bomb bay. Bit short and sweeter now. We've got to finish the cannons and this, that and the other, but we'll do that on the final fit up. I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.